This brother says,
Muslim often says,
one mistake that you can find in the Quran, and wallahi, I am going to leave Islam right now.
All right, let's check it out. And I'm not going to just show one, I'm going to show five. So in Surah 20, verse 71, the Pharaoh threatens to crucify his court magicians. What's the problem? Crucifixion wouldn't exist for another 14 to 1500 years. But whoever was writing the Quran didn't know that. They made a mistake.
His first claim is that crucifixion didn't exist for another 1400 to 1500 years. But here is his problem. The Quran never described the Roman-style crucifixion. The Quran described Pharaoh as saying, I will crucify you on the trunks of palm trees. So Pharaoh wasn't planning some Roman-style cross act. He was threatening impalement, a method that was well known in the ancient Egypt.
Keep quiet, let book enter your head.
During the reign of Pharaoh Meneptah, Egyptians record described how captured enemies were impaled south of Memphis as a form of public punishment, and this brutal method was meant to send a message to the future invaders, and it took place during the same period as the victory stele of Meneptah. The Court of Hammurabi, around 1754 before the Common Era, refers to impalement as a legal punishment. To even make it more clear, in the book of Deuteronomy, it states that whoever that is hanged on a tree is under the curse of God, and you claim Moses wrote the book of Deuteronomy. So if hanging on wood didn't exist at his time, why did he talk about it? Not only that one, the king of Ai was hanged on a tree in Joshua 8:29, and again Haman was hanged or impaled on a gallows. So my brother, what exactly are you arguing against?
I wonder.
The Quran didn't make a historical mistake. You just made a mistake reading the verse itself and history. So next time, come with fact but not feelings.
The second mistake is in the same chapter, verse 95. We see Moses talking to a Samaritan. What's the problem? The Samaritan people group didn't come until hundreds and hundreds of years after Moses.
There he goes again, that the Quran made a mistake by mentioning Samaritan in the story of Moses because Samaritans didn't exist at that time. Let's break this down. What does the verse actually say? In this chapter 20 verse 85 to 95, Allah mentioned a man called As-Samiri who led the people astray by making a golden calf for them to worship. Muhammad bin Ishaq reported from Ibn Abbas that he said, As-Samiri was a man from among the people of Bajarma, a people who used to worship cows. He still had the love of cow worshipping, but he pretended as if he has accepted Islam with the children of Israel. As he moved with them, his name was called Musa bin Jafar. Qatada said he was from a village called Samara, not Samaria. He was called As-Samiri because he was not from among the children of Israel, but a man of Samara, not a descendant of the Samaritans. So the Quran wasn't talking about the later religious group called Samaritans. It is talking about a specific individual. Let me give you an example. I am called Munir, and Munir in Arabic means the light of the moon. Now tell me, does that mean I literally came from the moon? Of course not. So just because this man was called As-Samiri doesn't mean he was from the Samaritan sect. That came long after Musa. It is just a title but not a timeline. The Quran didn't make any mistake. You just made a mistake trying to sound smart without checking classical sources.
You are under arrest.
The third mistake we see here is in 86:6, where the author of the Quran thinks that the fluid to make a child comes between the backbone and the rib cage. Everyone knows that's not true.
There he goes again, and this is one of the verses that most critics use it against Islam, that it is scientific error to say the fluid to make a baby comes from between the backbone and the rib cage. Calm down, let's go back to class. What does the verse actually say? He is created from a fluid gushing forth, stemming from between the backbone and the ribs. Note this, the Quran didn't say sperms come out from that particular area. It is describing the deep anatomical origin of the reproductive system, not the physical exist point. Modern embryology confirms this. We are all taught that sperm is produced in the testicles, located in the scrotum. No debate here. But here is the part most people like him doesn't know. The formation of the testicles doesn't start in the scrotum. They form high up in the abdomen, specifically in the retroperitoneal space, located in the posterior abdominal wall, between the spine and the lower ribs, specifically at the level of the 11th and the 12th ribs. Then around 6 to 7 months in pregnancy, they now descend into the scrotum. But here is the key. Their blood vessels, their nerves, and lymphatic connections stay attached to their original location, that is in the retroperitoneal space on the posterior abdominal wall, located between the spine and the lower rib. So when the Quran says the fluid comes from that region, it is anatomically accurate based on where the system originates. The Quran didn't make a scientific mistake. It reveals a scientific truth that modern anatomy only confirmed centuries later.
Fourth and fifth mistakes are actually in the same story. One is the story itself, but within the story, chapter 18, verse 86, the Quran says that the sun sets in a spring of murky water. The story in Surah 18 actually copies this 6th to 7th century Syriac Christian apocalyptic work about Alexander the Great.
Let's dismantle this one step at a time. What does the Quran really say? And when he reached the setting of the sun, he found it as if setting in a body of dark water. The verse is clearly describing Zulkarnain's perspective, what he saw when he reached the furthest west in his journey. It doesn't say that the sun literally sinks into a muddy spring. It is simply describing how it appeared to Zulkarnain. Just like we say the sun sets. Do we mean the sun literally dropped behind the earth? Of course not. It is a figurative language used in every culture and every language. So let us not act like a poetic expression is suddenly a scientific error. Did the Quran copy the Syriac romance of Alexander the Great, which is believed to be a made-up story? The answer is no. Let me break it down for you. This particular verse was revealed when the Quraysh sent people to the Jewish rabbis asking how to test Muhammad. So they gave them 3 challenges. One of them was, the Jews told them to ask the prophet about a man who traveled to the east and west, and that if he is able to tell the story, then he is a true prophet. So this challenge led to the revelation of this verse, and this particular occasion happened before Hijrah in the year 622. So it is believed to have happened in the year 615 to 621 CE. But the specific version of the romance of Alexander that includes the Ya'juj and Ma'juj and the Baris War is the Syriac Christian apocalyptic version, and this particular version is believed to have been written between the year 629 to 630 CE. So do the calculation yourself. This is approximately 8 to 15 years after the revelation of this particular verse of the Quran. So tell me, how can you copy something that hasn't been written yet? If anything, the Christian apocalyptic writers copied from the Quran and attributed it to the wrong person, because the Quran talks about a believer and they are talking about Alexander the Great. Everyone knows Alexander the Great was a polytheist but not a monotheist. Zulkarnain in the Quran didn't worship idols. That is why the Syriac Christian apocalyptic work of the romance of Alexander the Great is a made-up story. They copied the story of Zulkarnain from the Quran and attributed it to Alexander the Great.
And so if you're a Muslim watching this, I want to encourage you to do 2 things.
Alright, let's see it.
1, look into my claims, see if they're legit.
Tell everybody that the news is fake.
We have already examined it, and believe me, none of them is legit.
Salute me.
So the challenge still remains. Find a mistake from the Quran.
You can't do it.
But more importantly, call out to Jesus.
We cannot call out to Jesus, but rather the one whom Jesus called upon when he needed help. That is the God of Jesus, the creator of the universe. Quran chapter 19 verse 36. Jesus Christ said, "And indeed Allah is my Lord and your Lord, so worship him. That is the straight path." So my brother, start to worship the God of Jesus. You get the point. Assalamu alaikum.